You know how it feels when a game you love is hated by everyone around you? Well, I do, all the time. People say I have bad taste or low standards, but I like to see it as me craving niches which are ignored. But there is a game out there that fills a lot of niches that I love. Persona 1, also known as Shin Megami Tensei Persona, or the bad Persona, but not known as Revelations Persona because I do not want to acknowledge America as being real, is a game that clicks with very few people, but for all 6 of us who actually enjoy this game, it really clicks. The original duology, or I guess trilogy, gave us a story and gameplay far removed from what the series is known for today. These games still wear the SMT influence on its sleeve. I'm fine with modern Persona, in particular 3, they are all good games that serve a niche. But with their origin being ignored, I feel obligated to dig up its corpse and put it on display for all of you to see. Persona 1, much like every one of its sequels, except Eternal Punishment, give us a quiet high schooler to play as. The difference is, this is one who uses a gun. It was a different time, or well, maybe it was just the series doing what it does on every odd-numbered game. Our boy with earrings and his friends, of whom there are 8 to choose from, learn that their world is changing and being filled with demons. Since there are strength in numbers, you grab all 8 of your friends, cut out most of them and try to find a way to squeeze the remaining ones around the game's restrictive party system. And then it's time for action. And by action, I mean it. Well, I mean first-person dungeon crawling through tight corridors. I know a lot of people don't like this, and as much as I want to say they're wrong for thinking that way, I understand it is a very subjective preference. As I said at the beginning of this video, this game fills niches. First-person dungeon crawling through corridors like this wasn't anything new back at the time of its 1996 release. But unlike previous examples, this game runs on hardware powerful enough to include fluid movement between tiles, which makes the pacing feel less sluggish and less robotic. What was once a series of static pictures is now fully animated 3D models. This isn't a big deal now, but it feels like a late 90s modernization of classic formulas, and unlike games like Etrian Odyssey, which put you into large open rooms, this is all narrow and almost claustrophobic. It's very immersive and truly makes you feel like you're in this world. Well, in the world and very nearsighted since you can't see ahead of you more than a few meters. To help reduce anyone's annoyance, there is a minimap, which will help to guide you and help prevent you from getting lost. Notice I said help, it won't stop you from getting lost, but it does help a little. In addition to this, when exploring the overworld, you can have everything labeled for you to avoid confusing a building in the scenery with one that is required to progress the story. There is something just satisfying about exploring a real-world scenario which has been corrupted. Persona 2 carried this trend in both its releases, but it's something we saw less and less as the series progressed. This isn't Tartarus. This isn't a TV we jump into. The world that we are in is the character's world, complete with their school, their shopping centers, their hospital, their homes. Each of these dungeons feels truly unique, but one thing more unique than the dungeons is the game's combat system. Persona 1 again strikes this weird niche. It feels like someone crammed a tactical RPG into regular JRPG turn-based combat. You get a small area that you can rearrange your characters in, and each of their weapons and spells has different effective ranges. It's all grid-based and you may need to think about the ideal place to put each character. And you also have to factor that in with their main weapon, their gun, and their spells, all of which have very different areas of effect. In addition to having different areas of effect, they also have advantages and disadvantages against enemies. A lot of these go by the usual typings you'd see in later games. We also have the fact that every party member can and should switch out their personas. You get your personas by talking to the enemies, and you have to navigate the best options and the best possible reactions based on each possible monster and situation. You can accidentally screw yourself over, or you can get exactly what you want. It is a really good situation that just keeps you on your toes a little bit. I find it fun figuring out the best possible interactions, and even when I do screw up, the dialogue is pretty funny and I enjoy reading it. While battling, be sure to use your personas often. Not just because it seems obvious to use your more powerful spells, but the more you use each persona, the stronger they get and the more spells you'll unlock. This system reminds me of Final Fantasy II, in which you're grinding your abilities. However, unlike that game, this doesn't seem to annoy people. You have a lot to consider. You can play the game twice with 2 very different parties, and each character does specialize in different weapons, different ranges, and their personas will be changing throughout the game. There is a lot of replayability in this. This could be overwhelming to some, but with enough patience it all becomes second nature. This isn't a game that requires you to move pieces around and optimally make the best use out of every turn. But it's also not one you can sleep through either. Do you want to feel smart without actually doing anything that requires you to be smart? Just play Persona 1. It is the best placebo for intelligence I can think of. But if you do want to sleepwalk through the game just a little, this game does have a fairly robust auto-combat system, which lets you use things such as the last used move, or make it so you're all using your primary weapons, all your guns. You can leave it on auto as long as you make sure Maso isn't attacking no one because he's out of range. This isn't a very challenging game by any means, but it does offer a very challenging secondary story route for more experienced players. This game splits off fairly early on, and you can play the game in the intended standard route, or you can get rid of that comfort zone and endure the Snow Queen route. This optional story will replace the rest of the game once you set the flags required for its activation. Hope you didn't accidentally do everything required for it on your first playthrough. This route changes up everything, and the game does become more challenging, and as a result much more grind heavy. This isn't your father's Persona, and I don't just mean that because it was cut out of a Western release for Persona 1 back in the day. Pick your poison and stay on your route, and regardless of whatever you pick, you will find a good RPG waiting for you. Or not? I mean, everyone I know dislikes the game. Maybe it's just a me thing. I can't find many others who even agree the soundtrack of this game is a jam. But if it is a me thing, I'm happy to die alone on this hill. More underappreciated games for me to hoard. Also, play Persona 2 Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. They're good, I promise you. Other people like those games. They're good, it's not just a me thing. Play all 3 of these games. The first 3 Personas are great. Please, please play them. Please.